This happened when I was around 7 to 12 years old. The nightlight would reflect an image of what appeared to be a woman's face. She looked old, around her 50s or 60s, with short curly hair and high cheekbones. The reflection was very detailed and very clear. I thought I was just imagining or looking too much into it, but I couldn't think of it as anything else but exactly a woman's face. It would creep me out at night, so much that I wouldn't be able to sleep. Sometimes, it even looked like she changed expressions. On some nights, I'd get a very, very creeped out feeling or bad energy in the room, and she looked like she was crying. I could see the tears running down her cheeks. And on some nights, she looked angry, and she was crying, and her tears looked like blood. And some nights, it was a bright plain circle. It gets weirder. This is the reason why I decided to talk about this. I have never mentioned it to my sister, because at the time, I thought I just had a vivid imagination, and I didn't want to scare her. 10 years later to this day, my sister casually mentions, "I remember when we were kids, I used to see a woman's face on our ceiling, and it was the creepiest thing I've ever saw." I told her I thought I was the only one that saw it, and she mentions that it looked like she would change facial expressions, and looked like sometimes she was crying blood, or she'd catch her mouth open late at night like she was screaming. I have no idea what this was. I'm usually pretty skeptical of the paranormal, and the idea of this is very unsettling. Last night, I sat on my back porch to look up at the stars. I'm in Colorado, and it was about midnight. As soon as I looked up, I saw what looked to be a shooting star streak a short way across the sky. Right after that happened, I saw a small but very bright flash right where the shooting star had ended. Then another flash, and another. I called my wife outside to make sure I wasn't imagining things. At first, she thought it was a plane, but soon realized it wasn't. We see planes all day where we live. It was flashing with random timing. It was also moving in completely random directions every time it would light up again. This thing was also very far up in the sky, higher than any plane I've ever seen. It literally looked like a star that was flashing. We watched it for about 5 minutes while it got less bright and looked to be gaining in altitude until it disappeared from our sight. I've seen some strange things in the sky before, but this was the strangest thing I've seen. Maybe it was a star that was dying. Maybe it was a military aircraft that can make crazy random maneuvers. Has anyone ever seen something similar? My boyfriend and I are travelers and live in our van. I am from upstate New York and he's from Manhattan. I've been living like this for over 5 years now and have seen a lot. One of the best parts about this lifestyle is the people you get to meet from all walks of life all over the world. Needless to say, we have had a lot of exposure to different people, and we aren't easily scared by strange behavior or differences. A lot of times, we will camp in national forests, but there are also plenty of nights we spend in Walmart parking lots and Home Depots, and anywhere we can find with overnight street parking. The latter has brought us to some sketchy areas, where other homeless people camp in bum camps and whatnot, and obviously hardcore drug use in some of these areas is a real thing. With that being said, a few weeks ago, we were kicking it in Denver, and went downtown to the Rhino District, off of Larimar, I believe, and we're looking at the murals and street art and taking pictures and generally just chilling. It was almost midnight, and we ended up in an alley behind an old Catholic church when we saw the feet in blankets of someone sleeping in the doorway. Now, as another person on the street, even though I don't live the exact same lifestyle as people who have to sleep super public like that, I still empathize as much as possible and try to give them respect and privacy. Like, I don't grill them while they're laying there because I can imagine how uncomfortable and demeaning that would be to wake up to. So as we begin to pass this person, I keep in the forefront of my mind not to stare, and I prepare myself that they might be asleep or they might be awake and looking at us, and not to get startled. This person was laying in a maybe 3-foot indent in front of an entrance to an old factory behind this Catholic church. No matter how prepared I try to get myself, and no matter how much exposure I have to other people on the street, I could not help but get a surge of adrenaline and fear when we passed by this lady. As we got closer, I glanced over and she was sitting up, slouched in the corner, looking right at us. To me, she looked like she could have been native or Hispanic. Her skin was a mix of brown and gray, and she had long, tangled black hair. But what I remember most is her eyes. They were huge and bugged out, and seemed like they were painfully strained, and you could see her lips pull back to show her teeth effortlessly. She had a blank expression on her face the whole time we walked by. I feel like this is a good place to mention that after spending time on the West Coast, you get crazy accustomed to tweakers and general meth antics. You can usually always tell when someone has lost themselves to meth, and it is a special kind of crazy, but crazy all the same. You can feel when someone has lost themselves to this drug, and the decaying and neglect of their bodies is very apparent. With that being said, this woman did not give off druggy vibes. She didn't look ill and frail because of drug use, and she didn't seem to be fueled by drugs. She genuinely looked sick, like terminally ill type sick. The most fucked up part of this is what she said to us as we walked by. Shane was on my left side, my little husky was clipped to me in between us, and the lady was sitting on the ground to my right. And as we passed by, and I noticed she was making eye contact, I gave her a soft, gentle smile and looked down. I don't know what Shane did to her as far as facial expressions and acknowledgement goes, but as we started to pass her, she says in a soft, serious voice with no inflection at all, "What is it called when you don't believe in God anymore?" And Shane quickly responded, "I think that's agnostic." And we just kept walking. As soon as we got out of earshot, I was like, "Shane, what the fuck? Why did that scare me so much?" And he was like, "You're okay. It was just a homeless person. It's no big deal. I had a feeling she was going to scare you though, but it's okay." And we kept walking down the alley. At this point, I let Boppy, my husky, off her clip so she could walk on her own, and she just followed behind us quietly. She never barked throughout the whole ordeal or acted scared at all, and she's losing her eyesight a bit, but I have seen it heighten her other senses, and she knows when things are fucked up or if someone wants to hurt us and will bark and go into defense mode. She went through this whole encounter with nothing. We leave the alley and are in front of these old apartment buildings that remind us of something you'd see in New York or even New Orleans. Totally project looking, almost shotgun houses, and completely out of place for gentrified ass Denver. We saw them as we drove by before this happened, and instantly felt drawn to them because they were so out of place. There was a kid's jungle gym placed on top of a bush in front of a house, which was distinct as fuck, but we didn't mention it until later. And there was a haze of a flashing TV screen, and someone screaming in one of the houses through the open door. And this was all across the street from the old ominous Catholic church. It was just the dark alley, the lady, the creepy church, the foreign houses, the supposed presence of children, and the soft hazy lighting from the streetlight above that was such a mindfuck that it didn't feel like we were in Denver anymore. Or, I hate to be this guy, but like we weren't in 2020 anymore. Later on that night, we got back to the van, and Shane told me that woman actually terrified him, and that he knew I was scared, but had to act like everything was okay for me so I didn't lose my shit. He said it was just as unnatural as I felt, and that he doesn't think we saw a person. When he said that, I flipped out, because that's exactly what I thought too. It was unsettling how we both felt the same thing at the same time, and didn't realize it until later on when we discussed the situation. This happened in Venice, California. So last night, we were sleeping in the van by the dog park near the boardwalk, and Shane was staying up doing some art stuff in the van. The way our van is set up is on the left side we have a big long window, and then the driver's side window uncovered. Shane heard someone's feet shuffling and dragging, and was curious which tweaker was walking by, and looked out the window to see someone passing by. This was about 2 a.m., and he saw a lady wearing a black beach hat resting on top of her head, with really thin balding hair, so much that you could see her scalp underneath. She turned her head to the side and tried to look through the big window, and it felt like she could see through the window, but simultaneously not looking at anything in particular. Her eyes were really deep set and sunken in, and it seemed like she hadn't slept in a while, but she didn't seem to be on any drugs. Her skin was pale white, and she seemed to be in her 70s or so. She was really frail and dressed to go to the beach, which was strange because it was so late at night, dark, and chilly for Venice at nighttime. It felt like she wanted people to think that she was going to the beach. She was talking to herself, but it wasn't audible, and was no human language he's ever heard. It sounded like radio tuning or something, like a strange frequency of radio tuning. She didn't notice him, even though they were a few feet away from each other, and she wasn't angry or anything like that. It just felt like she was trying to deceive him. The craziest part is there's a plastic divider in between the two windows, and when she walked away from the big picture window, Shane could hear her footsteps, but she never passed by the front window. She didn't cross the street or go behind the van or anything. She walked straight, and he never saw her pass the second window. I'm so glad I wasn't awake for this shit, because I would have totally lost it. As soon as I woke up in the middle of the night, and he told me what happened, I instantly got chills. I don't know what to think about this at all, but I would love to hear your theories. Thanks for listening. Dreams can be pretty real, or at least they can seem like it. I will never be able to forget the dream I had when I was 10 years old. It has been 16 years, but I still feel my eyes water and sadness wash over me when I think back to it. I'm not even sure if calling it a dream is the right thing to do. I'll just refer to it as a dream here, as I'm not sure what else to call it. The dream was extremely short, and involved a sort of false awakening. The sort that feels kind of real, and for a moment, you think you're awake. I woke, facing my closet, which was wide open. I never sleep with my closet door open. A large, cat-like creature, covered in iridescent feathers, walked out of my closet and made eye contact with me. It spoke to me without its mouth moving.
"We're taking it away for now."
Upon hearing those words, I felt an extremely overwhelming feeling of grief hit me, to the point where I was paralyzed. I woke up crying. My closet door was shut once more. To this day, I still don't know what they took away. Whatever it was, clearly still has an impact on me. When I was about 10, my grandmother lived in a very nice single-wide trailer. It had a long hallway that had a long mirror going down the length of the hall, and at the end of the hall was the bathroom and my grandmother's bedroom. For such a small trailer, my cousins and I hated that long hallway. We were all afraid to look in the mirror and always ran as fast as we could to get past it. Several times, I thought I saw a black shadow following me in the mirror, but it was out of the corner of my eye, so it was easy to write off. One day, I was in my grandmother's room playing on her bed, and I saw a dark, hooded figure standing behind me in the mirror of her dresser. I was facing the mirror head on and saw the figure clear as day. When I turned to run out of the room, there was nothing behind me, and I've been wary of mirrors ever since. Ironically, the only thing I inherited when my grandmother died was that dresser. But once it was out of the trailer and in my room, I felt no fear when looking at it. I think there was something evil in that trailer, because I haven't had any other experiences since we stopped going over there.